Welcome, welcome. Very excited to talk about this episode today. We are talking about episode 804. Now, there's only 6 episodes left. This episode is called Muskets, Liberty, and Sauerkraut. It's written by Evan McGahey and directed by Metin Huseyin. Just going to wait a few minutes and let people come in before I get into anything else. I really love this episode, though. It was so good. Hey, Tony. Hi, Tina. Hey, Ruth. Everybody coming in the house. Hope you all liked this episode as much as I did. I had a couple teeny tiny little nitpicky things, but other than that, I thought it was fabulous. Hello, Martina. How you doing? Vicky. So just want to mention that next week we hit the 5-episode mark. So we're at the midway point next week. As you may remember, I'll be doing a live thing that I'm doing here, but then I'm also doing a show with Jeff Woodman, the narrator of the Lord John series, for those of you that are newer here. And we're going to do one in the middle and one at the end. So this is the one we're doing in the middle, at like the halfway mark. How, what have you thought about the season so far? What were your favorite parts? What character are you most intrigued by? Like these kinds of things. Kind of like a wrap chat of the first half a little bit. And I will have Jeff with me to do that. It's the first time I'm kind of doing this type of a show, and especially with a partner in the middle of a season. So I'm going to put up a post for you guys to tell me what kinds of things you want to hear in that show, what kinds of things you want me to ask Jeff about regarding his opinion of the show. Remember, Jeff has not read all the books. He hasn't read any of the main series books, and he's read the Lord John books, of course, because he's a narrator for them. And he has watched season 7, but nothing before season 7. So he's going to be lost on the things that are callbacks a bit into, earlier seasons, which we're getting a lot of that this season. So hoping he's not completely lost, but we'll see how he is. He said his plan was after the first episode or second episode aired, and I shot him a text and I said, "What'd you think of the episode?" He goes, "I'm not watching it. What I'm doing is I'm binging it all right before we do our show." So that's his plan. Like this week, he's going to binge all of the episodes together so that it's all fresh when we talk. He's in for a doozy 5 episodes. Oh, you've only read The Scottish Prisoner? You definitely need to read, what I would suggest, if you only read a couple, to read Brotherhood of the Blade, because that has all the Percy background. So if you want to know more about the background of Percy and John, that's in Brotherhood of the Blade. And then the novella that comes between that, I want to say it's Custom of the Army. Read that, because there's reference to both, and then Scottish Prisoner. And then everything will kind of reread Scottish Prisoner after you've read those two, and it'll flow a little better for you, because the fight that they talk about in Scottish Prisoner happened in Brotherhood of the Blade. So you kind of read Scottish Prisoner not really knowing what they were talking about and what caused them to have such a rift that they opened that story with. But all of the stuff, when you hear the actual one that does John's voice, John's chapters in The Scottish Prisoner, that's Jeff Woodman. And he did all the shows for season 7B with me as a co-host. So it was a lot of fun. Okay, this is Muskets, Liberty, and Sauerkraut, written by Evan McGahey, directed by Metin Huseyin. Hey, Jan. Glad to keep you company. So the little summary of this episode was the Frasers and Mackenzie prepare for battle. The Murrays are met with an impossible choice for their young family. So I kind of had a little feeling of trepidation, even though I was excited because I thought, oh, we're going to get William and Bree, and oh, we're going to get Fergus and Marsley. And I knew all that coming in. But I also was a little leery because this is not one of their more experienced writers that has written a lot for the show. He's kind of been in the background as a writer assistant and things like that. So he's not real like one of the better known writers, so I knew that. So I didn't know really what we were going to get on that front. And then I also knew that this was a bit of a transition episode. The way I'm seeing this laying out now that we're 4 episodes in, it seems like it's going to be like almost 3 acts. like the first 3 episodes were an act, the second 3 are an act, the third 3 are an act, and then the last episode is going to be like this grand finale to the season and the show, and it's going to kind of be its own thing a little bit. You know what I mean? So that's how I'm picturing it. So this is the first episode of the second act. So we're trying to transitioning where we're merging people into Savannah and all the stuff happening in Savannah. The siege is coming in. We're getting the stuff that's going to happen with the loyalists and the big fight at the lodge, and like we're getting all of those beats coming in the second act, so to speak. And the first act was more getting them to the ridge, the reunion of the Max, kind of getting all of those pieces in place here, setting up the situation with William, trying to find Ben's body and this and that, and just kind of getting everybody set as well. Now we're getting, and the blue light power. How could this have happened? And we get the blue light power at the end of the third episode. So you're kind of getting a sense like that all connected the first 3 episodes. And now we're moving where everybody's going out. We have, Ian and Rachel going out, Brianna and Roger going out. The whole situation's going to be all the stuff that happens in Savannah. So that's going to be like a second act, all those 3 together. And then the third, I think, is going to be King's Mountain, and the Lord John stuff, and the rescue and all of that. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it laying out. So I knew this was the first ep of the second little section, and I knew there was going to be a lot of transition, people moving from one place to another, resetting up some additional storylines and things. So I thought, transition episodes, can be a hot mess if not handled well, because they can just kind of feel like there's nothing of its own happening, and it could feel jumpy because you're trying to move things back and forth. And now you got this writer that's not real experienced with it. So I'm like, there's great material in it, but I don't know if they'll be able to pull it all off without any problems. So I was very pleasantly surprised because this ended up being probably my favorite episode, very close with 2. 2 would be my second favorite episode, I think. But this one really, I loved it. I really loved it. A couple, like I said, minor issues, mainly in certain things of the way they were shot. So I'm giving it a 4.9 honeypots. I haven't been doing my honeypot ratings because that's usually something I do in the show. But since I'm doing the shows now, the detailed, the deep dive shows, I'm doing them after, I'm going to try to give a honeypot rating at least in a couple more evaluative things as I can on this live. So I'm going to give this a 4.9 honeypot. That may go up or down when we do the deep dive shows, because at that point I can see how it works with the rest of the season, and I can see if it was as good as I thought it was, type of thing, or better. So we'll see how that goes. But at this point, I would give it a 4.9. I really loved this episode. There was so much book dialogue and book lines. I mean, I've noticed that this whole season so far, they've been pulling so much from the book, even if it's had to be moved or changed a little bit or tweaked a little bit to fit a different way they're using it. They have taken so much from the books in dialogue, and you're still getting all of that kind of humor, and the personality of the characters are really coming out because of that, because it's all lines that Diana wrote for those characters, so they make sense coming out of their mouths. We're really advancing the stories now. We are merging what has felt so far as 2 separate storylines. Now we're getting that mesh and crossover with Max being there, bringing the Fergus and Marsley back into it, and having that interchange with Lord John and William. So it feels a little more like one story now as we've merged these 2 from the first part. I really loved all the second gen focus in this episode. We had the family theme all threading through, some terrific callbacks again to earlier seasons in this episode, something I think they're doing a lot of this season, which makes sense for a final season, especially on a show like this that has all of this adventure. And it feels like when you look at all the stuff that has happened over the 8 seasons of this show, all of the insanity that if this actually, all this stuff actually happened to any one specific person, and for real, they'd probably be in an insane asylum by now, needing all the copays and therapy in the world because these people have gone through a lot. And so it's easy to kind of feel like, what is this all? How is this all cohesive? And so this season, you see them really leaning into earlier bits and pulling them together to kind of feel like it all had a grand purpose. It all is working together. I really like that. They're circling back to kind of make a new, fresh idea on things you already thought you knew, which is very Gabaldonian to do. Diana does that all the time, and you see the show giving it that flavor, reframing things you thought you knew, like the comp story and different things like this. Also, while a lot was going on, it still felt really intimate. A lot of scenes focused on just a pair or three people, so it felt very, and having like real conversation between those people, instead of it just being plot, plot, plot. It felt like character work. So I really liked the blend of that in while moving the plot. It really felt well balanced that way. So it gave it a sense of feeling patient within the scenes, even though we were doing a lot and moving a lot. Within each scene, it felt patient, if that makes sense. Hi, Carrie. Good to see you, girlfriend. Judy says, I really loved Fergus in this episode. He matured a lot. He looks wonderful. His acting was better than ever. Fergus was one of my standouts of the episode, as was Flory playing Fanny. Oh my God, the girl is so good. She is so good. I mean, the tears, the shaky voice, the expressions in her face, and the way she moderates her, everything. I'm so impressed with that little girl. Phyllis says she loved the comedy of Fergus and Marsley's large family. I'm going to get into that because I think that was some foreshadowing as well. I know a lot of you picked up that as well, that vibe of it being patient with the scenes for character relationship. And one of you, Carrie, actually said, such a great episode. Absolutely loved it. Great conversations between Claire and Mrs. Cunningham, Fergus and Marsley, Fanny and Claire, William and Bree, Lord John and Bree. So you see all of these little character relationship beats. She says, so happy to see Fergus and Buck in this episode. I was so hoping for more story for them, and we got some. Only complaint was as someone in my 70s who adored the TV show Swamp Fox, I'm so disappointed that the character portrayed in this episode is not the Francis Marion I loved. This one's mean to Roger, but the actor is pretty handsome though. So I thought there were great standout performances by everyone, but especially Fanny and Fergus. Also Elspeth, Lord John. All of them really, really just shined. I mean, everybody shined. Strong performances and strong relational performances. As you went through these scenes, you got like a little bit of the dynamic without being spoken, the words underneath what's spoken, dynamic between the characters. So I love that. Yeah, every time Fergus is really focused on, he really shines. Christine says they haven't given Caesar many, if any, lines at all, so thrilled for him. Yeah, like even the one where he had the drinking thing, he would, and it was such a poignant episode for him. It felt the same way like that here, where you see his inner demons coming to the surface. Carrie says, for those who were complaining about Claire's drab outfits, it was really changed in this episode. Jamie must be spending some of the gold on her outfits. Quilted jacket, pin tucked blouse with covered buttons, and a different outfit for each scene. So the title, Muskets, Liberty, and Sauerkraut, we find out that's a toast from Fergus, because they're using the sauerkraut as a disguise or deception on their quest to obtain muskets to help fulfill their quest for liberty. So it's all connected. But you do get two other little ideas in that. First, this hodgepodge of unexpected elements thrown together with an unexpected connection between them. That title kind of gives you that vibe. And you get that in this episode, like things are kind of thrown together, unexpected turns come in, that people are going to be wowed with. I'm really curious to see how some of the show only people respond to the comp things. I know. I used to do battle with Blake because he was just like, well, he isn't even important. Like, why? Why does it matter to even show him? And I'm like, the comp matters. You don't know what he is. You don't know everything about the comp. So I'm really glad that they did this in the beginning of the season. I didn't expect this, but I'm glad that they did. The other thing that you get in this title, I think, nods to is the idea of disguise and deception, or hidden motives and purpose, things not being what they seem. And you see this in nearly every storyline, from Amaranthus making assumptions about Bree and William, to, everything looking hunky dory with Fergus and Marsley, but really they're under this constant danger and threat. The whole masking of her going to paint this portrait as a cover for them doing this plan to get Muskets, and then likewise John asking for her to come paint the picture as a cover for the real intent of her and William mixing. And then Jamie making the wrong assumption that this was Rob Cameron, but it turns out that it's Buck. We kind of go through that all along, and I kind of love that they've seen a different side of Elspeth. So we get a lot of things to show things covering for something else. So I like that as well. We also see this continuing theme over the season happening in this episode of the circle of life and family ties and legacy, with the advent of Buck, and then Jamie saying, you remind me of your father, and getting that kind of call back, and about the revelation about Fergus's background, and that kind of coming back around, the nod to the connection between Claire being a Beecham and the Beecham family, just all kinds of things like that, family ties and connections. Title card is Bree assembling and packing up her painting supplies. Again, like I said, this is a bit of a disguise with a different underlying purpose for both Bree and John. So before I get into talking about each thing, let me just check the board. Martina says Fergus was awesome. Love to see him on screen. Martina says, also enjoy Elspeth. Did you know that she was married to Sting and has 2 kids with him? Yep. Happy to see Buck. I was so happy to see Buck. Elspeth appeared human in this episode, but apparently doesn't stay like that. Yeah, she was very quick to say that Claire's husband was away. I didn't like that. Anyway, so we cold open with this scene with Roger, Bree, Claire, and Jamie sitting around the table. And Jamie says the siege happens on October 9th. The Continentals lose, but you should be safe in the city. Jamie plops this gold on the table, and he basically says, we need to get arms. I can raise a militia because I don't want to have to be dependent on Benjamin Cleveland and answer to him and fight for him. I'll be darned if I'm going to do that. He says, so I want to make sure we have our own militia here. He wants to go get the guns. And I kind of had a little issue with him going and thinking that he was going to get the guns from Marion. In the book, he goes to Marion to kind of get advice on creating a militia in the backcountry because he knows he was familiar with it, and maybe ideas of where he could get some guns. He wasn't expecting Marion to just sell him guns because they're in the middle of this battle. They need their own guns. More so to put him in touch with somebody that could sell him guns maybe, but also give him ideas and pointers about how to build the militia, how to get this going, how to maintain connections with the Continental Army and things like that. So I didn't like that kind of pulling that together too much, but as it is, he kind of gets a brush off, which we'll get to. In the book, we see that it's Fergus that connects him with smugglers, and that's how he gets the guns. So maybe that's still going to happen, or maybe after he does this fight, Marion helps connect him up with some. Now, there was a little bit of thing about the joke that Roger said, and it fell kind of flat. And I kind of feel like it was the way it was shot. And that's why I said I had a problem with that was some of my issue with this episode, is some of the ways things were shot made it unclear what it actually was doing, or made it feel strange for some reason. And one of them was this. And I mean, it could have easily been changed if Roger would have kind of leaned over and looked hard at it and then picked up a gold bar like this and looked at it and said, it doesn't even have the ability to be shiny like on film, and you see him doing that. That would be a little more of a a cue what he was talking about, but a lot of people didn't get it. And I've seen that on a few posts in other places. So it's not just some of you that did it. It's kind of a thing. And that means they didn't shoot it right, to be clear. I don't know if that's a directing choice or an editing choice, but somebody didn't shoot that correctly. The other thing in that vein, now I know this was something everybody loved. I kind of feel like I'm on an island on this one. And I normally would have loved this, but I didn't like the way it was presented in the show, is what I didn't like about it. Because I've always been talking about, we need to see more of Jamie's faith side. They never want to show that on the show. And it's so much of a part of the book, you know? I used to always say that. And so when here we get this blessing on Ian and Rachel's journey. But for me, I don't know why. I don't know if it was just the way it was shot or blocked or something, but it felt very awkward. It felt like it was staged, like they were standing on a stage instead of having a normal connective moment. You know, they were all facing out as he does this prayer, and then the camera would go out and show the horizon and then come back. And it just kind of felt forced or staged or something. You know what I mean? The way it looked for me. I know a lot of people loved it and thought it was great. And it was great in the way that it was included. I just didn't like the way it was framed and shot. It kind of felt awkward or something. Like they were all standing looking out as he talked. And it just didn't feel natural for me. Okay. So I thought it was a very smart adaptive choice to leave the kids with them, because in the book they take the kids, but the kids never really have a role in Savannah at all. And it works better to not have them there. And plus it leaves them there when Buck shows up. So I think that was a good idea. The prayer is the one he did with Aiden before the bear hunt in the book. Yeah, but I'm not talking about the actual prayer. I'm talking about like the way it got delivered. It felt weird to me. Book readers know that Jamie would say a prayer whenever anybody, so it looked over the top the way it was shot. Okay, so it wasn't just me, because I know I felt bad saying anything, because I kept seeing everybody going, I love that we got the prayer and we got the Gallic prayer, and I felt bad saying that I had an issue with that scene. The same kind of issue that I had with the scene with the shooting of the table and the gold thing. It kind of just felt awkward in the way that it landed. And I kind of felt like that. So I don't know if it was the director's choice or the editing choice of what shots they used to put together, but it felt awkward to me. It felt like it was being forced in, not naturally flowing out of a normal conversation that they were having and a goodbye. Felt like, let's all turn and face out and then say what we're saying, and then they all look out at the you wouldn't do that. So it looked weird. And I felt guilty even saying that, because I know we all like when they bring the faith into the story, but it just felt weird this time. Okay. So now after we come back, we end up in Savannah, but I'm gonna do the Savannah stuff separate. So next time we're on the ridge, we see Jamie comes back from collecting the rent, and he finds out that a lot of people are actually loyalists. And now I'm starting to get okay with understanding why he left with it. Let me know what you think about joining me. And then went and did on a recon, to find out if everything he said is true, how ingratiated he is with the tenants. So he comes back and he said there's not enough patriots left on the ridge, even though the Arsmere men will be there for him. And when we see the preview, we do see Evan Lindsay there with Buck on the little ridge balcony thingy. So he definitely at least sticks with them, no matter how impressive Cunningham was. But anyway, he says that he's going to have to go far out to get people and go outside of the ridge and see what he can find, because he doesn't want to have to be under Cleveland and stuff. Claire says, why don't you just kick him to the curb? Which is what I was saying last week. But he says that he can't really do that. He wants to keep an eye on him, and he's going to go out and get militia people from the outside. He's going to take Josiah. So once he said he was taking Josiah, I knew then, I had a feeling that it was Buck that was going to be the person. Well, first of all, I had a feeling coming into the episode, because Dermot Murtaugh was promoting the episode, so I thought he must appear. And so knowing that, and then seeing that Josiah was the one that was riding on the horses, so it wasn't, I didn't have to like put the frame being Buck on the horse, because I know Buck's a lot bigger. I said, oh, okay, so that Scottish fellow that they find is Buck. So that must mean the scene that we got a clip of him beating Rob must be that it's a flashback. It's being told in flashback. Anyway, so at the same time, we also find out that Cunningham is waiting on an answer. So this Jamie buying some time to get his bearings on where people stand, what his options are. So I guess that was smart because that confused me last week. And so Jamie says that the book says Ferguson is a vicious, ruthless, burning homes of rebels without warning, forcing their allegiance, which is a very accurate description because Ferguson was a son of a bitch. He was really vicious. It seems like he and Cleveland are like two peas in a pod. So it'll be interesting when I do the deeper dive review of this. I will give you like a little history hit in my episode. So we'll talk about these guys a little bit in those shows. Okay, so Ian and Jamie and Josiah are out by the riverfront, which remember, like next to a river, big change is going to happen, a transition going to happen, right? So they're coordinating, trying to get men to sign up. Josiah gets a line, holy moly. And so these are all strangers. You get the impression like these people don't know him. He doesn't know them. They really have no loyalty to him. And he's basically getting them to join because they're going to get a musket out of the deal. So that's not a whole lot of loyalty, in that. So I'm sure he's not feeling too warm and fuzzy on the whole situation, but he's got to make it work. And then Ian comes in and he's like, I got to talk to you, Uncle. And he's like, there was a Scottish fellow. And like now when he goes, we get more of that scene. And he says, there was a Scottish fellow. And he says he's coming to FrasersRidge. And he says he knows Brianna and Roger from Scotland. So right away, Jamie's like, Rob Cameron. And he's like, yeah, I think so, or whatever. And I thought, of course, I knew it wasn't Rob Cameron unless they drastically changed things. So I thought, okay. And so he goes and I said, this must be Buck. And when he turned, and I knew because it had to be like that reveal thing. And I saw that they were kind of staging it that way last week. So I knew it was like going to be like a ta-da. In the book, numbers weren't a problem, Anita says. Cunningham went away from the Ridge to recruit. He did, but he also had some people on the Ridge. There was some of the people on the Ridge were with him, and that's why he evicted all those people. He evicted like 18 people or something like that from the Ridge. And then all the wives came, remember? So some of the Ridge did turn. So he goes over and they go and, tells Ian to get behind him. Immediately I thought, wow, again, we're getting this like echoing feeling of things circling back around. He comes around, puts the gun to his head, and he says, my name is JamieFraser. I hear you know my daughter, Diana Mackenzie. He says, I do, And as soon as you hear his voice, you know who it is. You should know. And then he says, Rob Cameron? Oh, no, I'm not that scoundrel or whatever. It's like, God, don't put me in the same boat with him. And he says, my name is Buck Mackenzie. And he says, I came to talk to Roger and Brianna, let them know they're not going to have to worry about Rob Cameron anymore and to give Roger back his wee book. And Jamie's just like, and I kind of just love the vibe of this constant this mistaken identity between these three people, because you have kind of this double speak of that scene earlier with Roger and Jamie, where he's talking about Buck and he says, well, he was a good man and he was family, so I loved him. And sometimes good men make mistakes. It doesn't mean you don't forgive them. And we saw like the double play of Jamie did the same thing with Roger as what he's saying that happened with Buck. And now Jamie's doing it to Buck as well, where he mistakes him for somebody that he's not, which goes into that theme I talked about earlier, where things aren't what they seem at first. He's lucky he didn't blow his brains out. That's not Rob Cameron, that was Buck, So I kind of thought that was funny how you're seeing that echo of that. Here I said, Jamie misinterprets Roger, season 5. Buck misjudges who Roger is, and now Jamie thinks Buck is the enemy Rob instead of the family Buck. So you're getting these like resounding echoes over the seasons. I think they will hold off telling the story about him going to the future until Roger and Bree return. So we're not going to get that right away because I don't think they're coming back until at least episode 6, at the end probably of episode 6. So that we probably won't get all this detail because I'm sure they'll want to tell it when Roger and Bree are there to hear it and respond to it, rather than tell Jamie, who doesn't know much. So I think that we're going to get all those details later. But I thought this was a great show choice. I'm so glad we have Buck back in. It's great that he'll be there to help Jamie and kind of be by his side in something. This little echo of Dougal is there. We see that when he says, "You look like your father." You see Jamie smiling and happy because for Jamie, I mean, he's his first cousin, They're first cousins, Jamie and Buck. And so, Jamie doesn't have any family left of his own previous blood family left, except for Jenny over in the Highlands. But he doesn't have anybody here except for Ian, maybe, but no older, his level, his peer type of person, like a cousin, an uncle, or whatever. It's somebody like Murtaugh or whatever, like a right-hand family person that he grew up with or knew or whatever. And so here he has Dougal's son. And even though they have history, Jamie really loved Dougal. Dougal taught Jamie to fight. He counted on Dougal as a strength next to him in a battle. So I kind of think he's looking at Buck and saying, young Dougal, because remember, Dougal fostered Jamie. So he knew Dougal at the age that Buck is now. And so he knew the younger version of Dougal. And so he sees that probably as he's looking at Buck. And I think it kind of makes him glad that he's there and he knows how he's been there for his daughter and his son-in-law. So I think you could just see the warmth in Jamie. And then when he gets back and the kids are there and the kids come running up to him, Jamie and Claire see their reaction to him. That kind of reassures them again that how much he's been around and helped this family. And they automatically are like, of course he can stay, he's family. And you couldn't help but think, as he's like saying, your reputation precedes you, and so does yours, and all this. And I'm thinking, yeah, dude, you don't realize that both these people killed your parents? This one lopped her head off. That one, they both freaking killed Dougal, But welcome, glad to have you stay with us, So I thought that was funny. And I think, too, Jamie has said he and Dougal have made their peace, and now he carries Dougal into battle with him. So I think he feels really good that, like, okay, he comes from the stock of Dougal. And so I feel good about him as a warrior by my side. I think it was just a lovely way. He gets thrown right into action. And I kind of thought that was funny, too, because it's almost like he's going to just get there. And right away, it's like, he's coming for you. And Buck is just going to be like, what's going on? Okay, give me a gun, I'll help. He's just thrown into the action like he was before. All of a sudden, like the kid's missing and he's thrown into action there. And Buck's just kind of like, okay. The other thing I thought about was, what about Buck's heart? If he went forward back to the future, then came back again to this time, that's 2 more travel times he had. And you think, man, like, he seems very unaffected by it now from somebody that had his heart issues. And he never ran into the healer person in the past. So it's not like he was getting treatment and stuff and now he's better. So I thought that was a little strange too, that he does that and we don't see any effect on his heart of any of that. So curious to see in his storytelling if he talks about that at all. And then you see when the kids go running up to him and hug him, which I just loved. And, she says, come on in, you're probably hungry. And he's like, how about those peanut butter sandwiches? Smiling as he's walking in with them. And you kind of see Claire smile behind him. And I kind of felt like, remember when Diana did that episode? She said that she looked at the peanut butter like a through line, kind of hold everything together, so to speak. It felt like that way by him throwing that peanut butter line in, because Claire had introduced that. Then it traveled down through her daughter to be introduced to Buck. Now Buck's coming back in and bringing it up. Now, it was something that in this time they don't do, really. Claire brought it back to this time. So I just thought all of that was really well done and great placement of these callbacks. And I just love that. And I love that he'll be there to back Jamie up and have this strong warrior type that'll be there to back him up. Before I go to Fanny and Claire, let me see what you guys are saying. Poor Ian was so confused about Jamie's reaction to Buck. Yeah. He's like, aren't we killing him? And it was also, that's another thing, the fact that it was Jamie and Ian together, like it was when Jamie and Ian together went after Roger. Again, that happened, but at least they asked questions this time. So that was good. Donna thinks that Buck's heart issue will resurface. Really? The blue light. Yeah, maybe Claire will heal Buck. That's a great idea. Maybe something will happen and she'll use her blue light again. So it doesn't feel as weird when we get to Jamie later. Maybe. I don't know. He went to a doctor in the 80s who did a procedure that they didn't have in the 1700s. Oh, you think he did it all on his own? Because he doesn't have a companion person like Roger with him to negotiate through all of that. He's probably going to keel over. Oh, you think that he's going to die? Do you guys think Buck's a goner in this season? That he ends up dying by the end of the season? I hope not. Maybe they'll explain the heart condition once Bree and Roger are there. Master Raymond. Maybe Master Raymond came back and fixed Buck's heart, and that's who talked to Master Raymond? Is that what you think? Like that's because we're like Master Raymond's supposed to come back in the show and he talks to somebody that's not Claire, they said. You think maybe he somehow was there when Buck came through or whatever and helped him? Interesting. Interesting. I like that idea. I thought Buck died last year. No. Buck just was going to stay, and they tried to talk him into coming with them, and he wouldn't come with them. So I saw somebody complaining that, well, what did he do? He didn't know where FrasersRidge was. And yeah, he did. He knew FrasersRidge was in North Carolina. He was with them. And as far as how he got there, they're like, he didn't know about Ocracoke. Yeah, I think he does know about Ocracoke because we just don't know it yet. Because when they left, they were deciding, in the book we learned, they were deciding whether they should travel through the stones of Craignadoon and then try to get a ship over to North Carolina once they got to the right time. But then they worried about having problems getting ships in the middle of a war. And so they decided they should try to take a ship then at that time, get over to North Carolina, then travel through the stones at Ocracoke. So they discussed all that with Buck. You know, Buck knew where they were going and why they were going and where they knew they could still travel from. I'm sure all that was discussed. So he knew. So I don't have a problem with that. Buck going to the doctor in the 80s was a joke. Oh, okay. Okay. I thought you were serious. I was like, I don't know how he negotiated. He doesn't even have ID. He certainly doesn't have a health plan or anything. He'd have to go see Uncle Joe. I did think it was kind of ironic. But, you know, honestly, as far as the parents go and as far as that Jamie and Claire killed Dougal together, he knows his mother was crazy. And I think that Roger told him some of the craziness that she did. I think that if he knew the circle, because he doesn't know these people. I mean, he met them once. He doesn't really know them or feel attached to them in any way. And I think if they explained, if he ever found out, I'm saying, I think if they explained to him that in the one case that, well, she was going back to kill Bree, so it was save my daughter or let her go, and I've saved my daughter. And then on the other situation, he was going to kill Claire because he didn't understand she was a time traveler, which now Buck understands. He would get that he had to protect Claire. And so I think he'd understand the situation. I do. It's just my thought. I think he would understand the situation, and he had be attached to these other people enough, Bree and you know, so forth, that he would say, yeah, you know, I think they matter more to him. So I think he'd understand. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about on the Ridge, Fanny and Claire. This was so good. Every scene was so good. Fanny and Claire. Florrie is such a damn good actress. I loved getting the whole third floor haunting. I didn't expect that they were going to do that. And then we get this beautiful little scene with Fanny saying how she wishes Jane would haunt her. And she starts to, her eyes are all watering and teary, and you see Claire just wants to pour so much love to this girl. And then she says, we have our memories to keep us alive. And she said how, and this was interesting, she said how Jane would say goodnight to her and call her my cherie. And she said, because she said my mother used to call me that. Now that's added from the book. That's not in the book. So that must somehow feed into this whole narrative they're going for with this, because that wasn't something in the book. So that's intentionally placed. So she, right away, Claire's like, she spoke French. Little, she said. She said she was trying to keep her memory alive for you. And she said, she told me things about our parents at night. She told me good things and she told me funny things, but she didn't tell me serious things because I guess she wanted to protect me from it. I wish she hadn't done that. So right away, we're seeing this longing that Frances wished she knew more about her parents, and more than what the sanitized things that she told her. Then she says she talked to the girls at the brothel, but she keep it from me. So I think that then leads into when Jamie asked them to go to the brothel later, which I'll get into. But because that was another point of confusion for people. Well, if they already went to the brothel and talked to Mrs. Abbott, why are they sending Ian back to the brothel to talk to people? Because she said, I'd hear her talking to the other girls about them, and she tried to keep quiet about it around me. And she said, I wish she had it. So I think now that got relayed to Jamie. And Jamie wants now Ian to talk to the actual girls that knew her to get whatever info they can learn from this conversation she had with Fanny here. So I think that's around where that's going and why. But I was still very surprised. I was surprised about him even going and the way that they've played out this bit with him going to Totis and stuff. I was really surprised about that because I fully expected in the need for adaptation, it would be a message brought to him or a Totis showing up with a brave sent with a letter from Emily explaining or something like that to cut out the whole trip. Because now you don't have Sylvia. Like so many things have gotten cut between him. They already visited the brothel. You don't have Sylvia, so you don't have that whole storyline. So I thought, yeah, they don't really need to go all the way there just to get this kid to him. They could handle it a different way where he just arrives at the ridge with a brave, with a note from Emily about, whatever the reasoning is, whatever they say on the show. So I thought that's how it was going to be done. I really did not expect they were going to go, doing this long trip up to New York and stopping at the brothel and all of that stuff because they had learned stuff about the brothel. But now I think that scene sets it up a little bit with her talking to Claire and saying she would talk to the other girls at the brothel. I know she'd had conversations with them about them, but she would keep me out of it. So now they want to get what she told the girls. Let's see. Then we get, it was just, I think Florrie is such a good actress. Like, I wish this show wasn't ending just because I'd like to continue with her and see her develop on the ridge and stuff. I really like her a lot. So then we get Elspeth coming up. And I love and her little dog too. That's from the book, but I love that got in there, especially with the earlier Wicked Witch thing. I love the continuous nods to her being the Wicked Witch of the West. And then when she turns around and tells Fanny, I don't know if you guys saw, Fanny does an eye roll. Like, oh God, it's her. Which I loved. She's just so expressive. And I think Jeff is going to really love all the connections with the Wizard of Oz too, because he's a big fan of the actress that played the Wicked Witch of the West. We had conversations about her. So I'm really curious how he's going to respond to that reference. And so in comes this storm of Elspeth as she's drunk. She's coming in and you hear Fanny politely in the other room go, would you like to go to the parlor and I'll get you some drink? No, I would not. Get out of my way, girl, blah, blah, blah. She kind of pushes her way into the room and she's like, I am in pain. I am hurt. And she sits down and she says, okay, I'll be able to help you. Well, if I didn't think that you could, I wouldn't have walked, 2 miles into whatever. So she's getting all snappy. And I'm thinking, hey, lady, just chill, relax if you want to be helped. Anyway, and we get these great scenes with all of this book dialogue and the humor of that scene. We get this visual callback to the shoulder, because even though we had her messed up shoulder in the thing, seeing it and seeing her fix it really does give you this callback to her meeting Jamie and fixing his shoulder by that visual. And we see her drinking. And she says, okay, this is going to hurt. She tells Fanny to hold her. And she goes, and I thought she did such a good job. Her whole acting in this was really great. And then the Grace Combing son of a buggering son. And Fanny just is like, you know? She's like, I haven't heard language like that for a long time. And then they get into this whole back and forth, where'd you get the language? And she tells her about the brothel. All of this is right from the book. So all of this conversation, it was really great that they got all this in, the humor of this. They talked about why, grass combing, son of a buggering sod is a curse word. We got the whole line about although they sanitized it a little for this actress, because in the book, it goes something like, I don't really know about virtue unless you can milk a man in under 2 minutes on the clock. And she just looks at, well, I think that's more of a talent than a virtue or something like that. And she's like, well, we all have our strengths. Claire's like, we all have our strengths. It was just great. But they changed it to satisfy a man instead of milk a man. So I saw the little sanitation there, I think, for this actress, because she's young. But it was still enough. I loved it, that whole scene. And you kind of see her relax, seeing this other side of Elspeth where she has less inhibition. She seems to have a little better understanding. She talks about Fanny being remarkable, but you really need to make sure she doesn't get herself in trouble. And I thought that was really great because normally, you're all going to hell, and she's like real judgmental, and she didn't show that side. She was just like, look, she's going to say things like that. You better make sure she didn't say it around the wrong people. And, she was a little more easygoing once she had the drink in her and she wasn't in the pain with her shoulder anymore. So I really liked all of that. But you also get the nod. Do you believe what your son said about his son, my grandson? I believe him. He said, do you think it's true? I think he believes that he really talked to him. And that's all that really matters. And I think at that point, they're kind of silently talking to each other without talking to each other and saying the hidden part out loud. But at this point, they both know, because I'm sure that the son has informed the mother that they know what he's about. So there's like hidden conversation happening underneath. Talks about, if I ever need to shelter people here, I have the space. They talk about the room upstairs being with the banging. So I thought all of that was really great. And then we get Cunningham, talk about send for the devil. Cunningham come in. He comes up and she opens the door and tells him, I'll get her things. And he pushes past her into the house, which pissed me off. Pushes past her into the house. I'll take care of it. And I'm kind of getting fed up with him and Cleveland treating Claire like she don't friggin' matter. You know what I mean? Like this and her. I'm thinking sure she's getting fed up with it too. But he comes in and he starts like assessing the house. You see him kind of looking how it's laid out, kind of getting the inside view of the house to kind of assess it. And then Elspeth says that Jamie's away. She kind of informs him. And she goes, oh, is he? I was waiting for him to talk to me. Well, he wants to talk to you too. And she goes, he'll be home soon. And then he starts to be creeping her out. And he was like, oh, he left you here all alone. This is a fine house. Like, a shame if you lose it. He liked the little mustache twisting. It was really creepy, very threatening vibe. And you see her try to buck up and like square off at him. No, actually, it's fine. I'm expecting him home anytime. And she's giving him the face like, you better back the frig off, dude. I thought that was very good. It was a very intense moment. I didn't like that he was talking to Claire like that at all. And then you see Elspeth intervene and say, okay, Charles, let's go. Did you get the cart? Because she could sense that he was getting a little too intense on her. And this is a woman that just helped her. And so there's almost like this, I think they're really getting across that frenemy thing going with Elspeth and Claire, because she kind of tried to intervene to help Claire, I think, in that moment. Do you guys think that? Before I get into Ian and Rachel, I'm going to check out the what you guys said. Florrie's an amazing actress, Tony says. Claire was waiting for more there, like from the information from Fanny, you mean, Diane? She was hoping she'd elaborate more about what she told her. Donna says the whole scene with Fanny and Claire, then Elspeth, was a book come to life dream. It really was. It felt so authentic to the tone and spirit of the book as well as the words. So I really like that. Somehow they're getting the big stuff in. The eps are so dense with content, but in a good way, Donna says. And what I think on that too is like within each of those scenes, even though we had a lot of different things, within each one, they felt patient to this time, didn't they? The way it was written, it felt like we were taking a breath with the scene, each scene. It didn't feel like, okay, we got to go from here to here to here to here to here. It kind of felt like once we were with people and they were having a conversation, we were kind of in the scene and relaxed with them having the conversation. I just wish Jenny was here, Donna says. Do you think they're going to do a surprise show of Jenny at the very end, come there to stay and be with them? I feel like they hinted to that in last season, that you never know, maybe I'll come eventually or something like that, she said. And then here, they mentioned it when they were on the porch. You're about him having the child last week. And I wish my mother could see him and all that kind of stuff. So I almost feel like maybe in the finale, she'll like show up on the ridge to live out her time with them on the ridge as part of bringing the family back together by the end. Maybe they'll do that, and they'll just bring that actress in for one episode. Maybe she couldn't be there for all of it, and it was too much to have another person in the mix for all of the adventure of it. But they'll still end with her on the ridge at the end. Just a thought, maybe. Vicky said she also thought that Totis was going to be brought to the ridge. I really did too, because I thought they have to find ways to condense this, and that would be easy to do when they don't have all these other stops to make and people to be involved. The cast, yeah, Laurie and Christine says everybody loves her, that the cast all have wonderful things to say about her. Yeah, you could tell Katrina was very impressed, very impressed. It's always a nod to The Wizard of Oz in every good book. Diane says that she watched Elspeth's face when her son was antagonizing Claire, and she chopped that conversation up pretty quick. I also felt bad for Claire as his threat hit hard about her being there alone. I know, that really was very scary, especially with Fanny there, and she was very vulnerable there in that situation. Because, he knows his enemy is there. I just felt odd about that whole situation, that he would leave Claire exposed and go off recruiting people and leave her exposed knowing this guy is there and could be a threat. You know what I mean? With him not present and Ian not present. Janine was surprised he would be disrespectful toward Claire no matter his political intentions. I think all of that charm was just a veneer that he was putting up. But now that all the cards are on the table, now he doesn't have to worry about his charm anymore. Because if he has his way, they're all going to be gone anyway. It would be exciting to see Jenny, Christine says. Ruth says she always thought that Jenny would show up in the finale. So you guys are thinking that could happen. Yay! Ian will probably run into Joseph Brandt on his travels, and it will tie in with Jamie somehow. Yeah, we could meet Joseph Brandt on his travels. You're right about that. I forgot about that aspect of it, but yeah. But the way he acts like this house is already his, the way he pushed in, the way he looked around, kind of mapping it out, looking at it, I just got annoyed as hell with him. He's shedding his snake skin. Yes, agree. So now we see Rachel is at the little trading post thing, and she finds this notice about the Indian massacre. And she tells Ian, and like I said, I was very surprised they're going to do this big trek north, stopping at the brothel. As I said, I thought that was going to be adapted. And then we see Rachel and Ian. And you see Rachel, she does feel a little like, and you see her admit that to Claire before they leave, that would you let your husband go 700 miles to see his first wife? Be okay with it, let him go by himself? She's like, you have a point. So you can see that she's feeling very tense about all of this and unsure. And then she says, I want to go too, so he remembers what's here for him, like to come back. You kind of just feel for Rachel in that moment. So I really loved that. And then we get this great scene with Ian and Jamie. And you can see Jamie doesn't want to say, I'm supposed to die in this battle. He tells him about the battle. And he kind of makes it like, I'd really like you there with me, without actually saying it. And he's like, well, when is it? And he tells him basically a year from then, or close to it, because it's October when the Macs are in Savannah. So I'm not sure how much time has passed on the ridge, but then he says October next, because it's the next October that Kings Mountain happens. And he says, I'll be back for that. So I'm thinking that until we get to Kings Mountain, like all that time, we're going to be having these bees flying out. And the second 3 episodes here that we're in is going to be the ventures of these bees going out before they come back. And then we get this beautiful line from Ian that says, I know that my dad always would guard your right, but I will guard your right in his stead. You see Jamie looking all touched. So I just thought that was sweet. And then we have this parting blessing thing. Like I said, everybody loved that. And I would have too, because I always say I want to see them incorporate faith more. But the way it was shot felt really staged and forced. So I already told you that, but I'm just repeating it because we're at that spot. With the brothel thing, at first I was a little confused with that because I thought we already got info about the brothel from the first scene. Jamie and Claire already went to the brothel, apparently. So I'm thinking that it's because of Fanny saying that her sister would talk to the other girls. She would talk to them about her parents and her life beforehand. And she kept it from her. And that kind of goes back into the broadsheet thing that the guy was writing when Jane was about to be put to death and the reporter was in there, because she said, this might be the only thing your sister ever reads or whatever. Don't you want her to know that your true history or whatever? And that's when she says, okay. So you felt like she was going to tell her things, some of the things that she kept from her all that time. You know, she knows she had kept things from her. So I really do wish they brought this back in. But Diana says they didn't. Diana says, yeah, I kind of wish they had used that because it seemed like an open door to do. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Ian and the brothel. And I love when he said, a brothel? Uncle Jamie, I'm already going to see my first wife, and now you want me to go to a brothel? And I love that. You know, Thee has too many women already. Remember when Rachel says that in the book? Thee has too many women already. Okay. So that's why I think it was only that they talked to the madam. They didn't talk to everybody else. They just talked to the madam who said the girls were sold to me to pay a debt by this Captain Vasquez. And that's all the info they really got from the madam. And then they were following it up. But now that she knows that Jane talked to the other girls, he wants Ian to talk to the other girls. So I think that's why we're getting 2 visits to the brothel. So we may see that come out in the episode titled Evidence of Things Not Seen. Maybe that'll come out then, because that is the definition of faith. So maybe it will somehow add more illumination to the story, whatever they find out. So now in Savannah, we first see Savannah, and it's right after the cold open and the credits. And we come into Savannah and we see the sign on the outside of the printer, you know, kind of waving slightly in the wind. Now, I want you to note something here that they do, because we get a lot of little nods about the fire coming in this episode. You see the sign outside the print shop, and as they pull back from the sign, you notice as we pull back, we see the hoist or whatever that is that pulls stuff up. We see that on the roof of the print shop. We see people on the roof bringing up goods and stuff. We see a second window where the people are pulling things into the main area of the print shop on the second floor. And we see the guy up top has bundles of stuff on the side, and they have a pulley. And you kind of see that very clearly as they pull back, because all that's going to come into play in the fire. You know what I mean? And I think they really sit on it to show you the setup. So it makes sense when we're in the middle of the fire to understand how all those things are to do with it. It's giving you a visual before they're going to have this all go into play. So I thought that was good. Pulley. Yeah, pulley. But it was like a thing, I think a hook, I don't know what you call that, but where they hook things into that netting that they had around the bundles that they hike up, whatever that is. Okay, so now we get the foursome of the Max and Versali and the Sauerkraut. This really great scene. They're all like siblings, and we really get that reintroduced several times into this scene. The Sauerkraut, they're all joking about the Sauerkraut, and you see Roger taking charge to hand things out and say, you know, we got whiskey and so forth, and then he brings out the gold. I thought that Fergus was incredible in this episode. Cesar did such a great job in it. He had this little charm and this little vibe as he's talking. And she said, when he talks about, you know, doing the painting with Lord John, and he says, he sent me a note about basically talking to Percy, but he's a slipperier character, and to make sure, use your own judgment with whatever he tells you type of thing. And he says you don't agree to anything on his behalf. So we get that bit. We get the bit about him being a minister. And now you're being a gun smuggler and a whatever, but as you're a minister, and they make jokes about all of that. All of that was really cute. We see the idea that Roger is going kind of as a guise of a minister. And we get the comment from Brianna about we have a doctor, a soldier, a minister, and now we're going to have an armorer. You kind of get that little bit thrown in there. Like that's from way earlier in the book when they go to visit the powder place or whatever. I'm kind of glad they took that out because I remember when we went over the book, a little bit of those chapters, and I said they contradict earlier stuff. It felt like it was the chapters were placed out of order in the book. So I'm glad that whole thing got cut out. We didn't really need it. You really get a family vibe of brothers and sisters between them reuniting, and they're laughing and they're talking about different things. And then we get this line where he talks about the guy that is sent this note, Percy Beauchamp. And then Brianna says, and this is not in the book, okay, but Brianna says, that's our mother's maiden name. Quite a coincidence. Now, this is very interesting because, first of all, our mother, that is our mother's name, she says, as she's talking to Fergus. So it really is like right in there, kind of putting this, she sees him like a brother. She looks at Marsley and Fergus as her brother and sister, and she references Claire as our mother, which I really thought was great. And then the idea that now this is the second time we are hearing in this show about Claire's connection to the name Beecham and then Percy's connection to the name Beecham, that tie of Claire to the Beechams in France. Plus, of course, her telling Colin in the early episodes that her family comes from Compiègne. So you get all of that kind of working together. I'm wondering if we're going to get more about that, her connection to this family, how that's going to play out. And if you remember, I don't know how many of you were here when we did our Moby study, but I talked quite a bit about Claire's connection and the history that you get in the Outlandish Companion about her connection and how that family may have branched off and left and gone to France, because in England they were known as the Baron Amand. And I said it's very close to Amandine. So maybe it was changed to Amandine when he went to France and then they developed themselves there. It is kind of alluded to. I'm shocked they're getting into that in the show. And we never really got conclusion of that in the show. Maybe it somehow ties in with the girls. I don't know. So we'll see. But I really loved her saying our mother. Let me know what you think about the bringing up again of Claire's connection to the Beecham and how that might play out in the story. So they pull out all their gold and they say, can we hold it here? And then Roger says, I don't imagine he'll have a bunch of spare guns laying around the camp, so arrangements will have to be made. And I was really glad they put that line in because I had the same question. Like, you're going to go to people about to do battle and say, give me a whole bunch of guns, sell me a whole bunch of guns. Like, they're not going to do that. They have to take care of themselves. They're about to go into battle. So I thought that was weird. So I'm glad that we gave Roger this line about arrangements will have to be made. Made it a little more logical. And so I think another hint that we get into this fate with the fire stuff that's going on is that when they leave, Marsley says, oh, here, I just thought you were coming to paint a wee picture for Lord John and give us a visit. And as they go out, she says, when you're done painting for Lord John, Fergus says, you'll have to paint a picture of us. She says, yeah, I would definitely do that. I'll paint the whole family, she says. And then Marsley says, oh, we're going to have and get an extra large canvas for you to do that. And I thought, oh, God, because I thought right away, that family is going to shrink. That's a note to how big their family is right now. And I kind of feel like it's a foreshadowing or a foreboding of what's going to happen. I also think that when you saw the rock, you see a rocket thrown through the window and it just missed Bree. And then they start to find out, because understand, it's about 8 to 9 months since Jamie and Claire were there. And when Jamie and Claire were there, the British had just recently taken over the city. Now 8 months or so has gone by. And so when Jamie was giving him those warnings, now we've had trouble brewing for Solly over this last 8 months. And so now we get this rock through the window, and her saying, oh, at least there's no note this time. And I get bags of snakes and rats and threatening letters and all this stuff. And Roger's like, what? Like, is this because you're working and doing stuff, printing stuff for the Patriots? And he goes, it could be from either. When you're a printer, both sides, it could be either side because we have to stay in the middle. Marsley says, when people don't like the news, they blame the printer. And then Fergus says, that's just the life of a newsprinter in these troubled times. And I think those things lay into his later meeting with Percy, because that makes that offer tempting, because they're in a lot of danger constantly here. And if this would give him a nest egg to have some of this money, and he could maybe take his family out of danger, but it would tie him to these people. So it's kind of like bad either way type of thing. Okay, when the brick comes through the window, it breaks the sign somehow. It breaks the sign. And it's interesting because the sign breaks between Fergus and his sons, because the sign at the bottom says Fraser and Sons or something like that. And it's split. So the Sons word was on one side and Fergus and Fraser and all that was on the other side. And they make a point to keep showing it. Like he's looking at the two pieces and going like this with the two pieces. And so I'm worried now it's going to be both the boys. Both boys are going to be gone, is what I'm wondering. Because the way it broke off the word sons separately, it does look like that. I saw somebody also thought that. So maybe now I'm even feeling surer of it. So a lot of foreshadowing about the fire, I think, here. So they go off to leave in the morning. Roger sets off for camp. He looks smoking hot in his outfit. My goodness, Roger got a glow up this season, did he not? With that black velvety looking whatever it was. I mean, he looks sharp. So he's going out to meet with this militia. And you see Bree is not feeling too happy about the whole situation, because it's easy on paper when you see, okay, the siege is supposed to be on the 9th. But that's when the siege ended, was the 9th. But before that, there's a lot of like build up to it. And so now Brianna's there thinking, oh, we'll be okay. We'll be in the city. Now she's seeing all the redcoats. She's hearing the booms of different guns and things. And she's starting to feel nervous. So you see Roger go like, I'll be back in plenty of time. Don't worry, blah, 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 putting her at ease. And so right away, like that's clear. She's getting a little Mac Mojo tingle telling her this something's not going to be good here. And he doesn't realize everything's going to get shut down and he's not going to be able to leave, even if he wants to. Of course, they don't realize that when they made this little master plan. And remember back when we were looking at the promo and I said that I think that William takes Bree to look for Roger, and that when they hug each other and she turns around, I said, I think she's looking at William in that shot and she nods and smiles. And you see Roger kind of rolled his eyes, like you gave him this look like, I think that at that point, William, I said in my little preview show, I think at that point, William probably says, after she threw herself in his arms, I think William says, I take it then this is Mr. Mackenzie, or something like some sarcastic remark that she threw herself into his arms. So I hope that this is your husband type of thing. And that's why Roger gave him the little squirrely look. I know now that's what it's going to be, because now the problem with it was, why didn't he see Roger before that when he left to go? But it's because he never got to John's house yet. So they haven't met yet. And he's just basically went straight to the camp. Brianna went to John's. And then this is the first that William is going to get to meet him, is after that battle. So that's why it was like that. So but I really think that's going to be a great scene. I also have another little theory, which I'll tell you at the end. So Bree heads to John's. And then when she gets to John's, and here we get the Pigweed side of the story. She gets to John's and she comes in, and you see the first person that sees her is William. And he's just like, bloody hell, it's you. And he's kind of freaked out a little. Then John walks in and he's just like, with the face, oh, well, would you invite our guest in? Brings her in, and you see that he's now trying to maneuver this situation, and he's kind of dancing on his toes a little bit, or John, trying to navigate. And it just was so funny to watch him at play in this whole scene. But all of this is like really from the book, abbreviated, but all from the book. You see, Amaranthus has this attitude. Like, who is this bitch coming in to wreck my plans? Which I didn't like at all. Who is she to be laying claims about anything or having anything to say about anything? You know what I mean? So anyway, she has a real, and then she was ignorant and rude. I knew that Uncle John had sent for a painter. I didn't expect it to be a woman. And you must be very good for him to come. Where are you coming from? And this is where I got the answer to last week's question about the note. Was what I think happened is he sent the note to Claire, probably asked her, can you ask your daughter? I don't know how to reach her. Maybe he thinks she's still in Boston or up north to see if she'd come down for a visit. Maybe that's what his intention was, because they didn't know she was coming from North Carolina. And so he said, where are you coming from? And she said, North Carolina. You see Amaranthus left. And then you see John go, oh, well, I am sure I have some business to take care of. You two get acquainted or whatever. And he walks, and you see Bree going with the eye roll, like, we know what you're doing. You're not fooling anybody. And he walks out, and you see them looking. The only thing I missed in this scene was her saying something like, I take it that you didn't know I was going to be here. And then William's calling John a conniving old sod. I really wish we would have got that line because I thought it was so funny in the book. So Bree is starting to crack William's edges a little bit. I just really love it. It's wonderful. As they are talking, he says, so you came from North Carolina. You must have met Fanny. How is she, Frances? And she's, oh, she's doing great. My mother's really grown fond of her. So has my father as well, our father. And she keeps throwing it in, saying, this is your family too. This is your father too. Type of thing to kind of keep breaking that into him and getting his reaction. And he's like, huh, I guess you knew then when I met you before. Did you know? She said, I did. And I really wanted you to meet my husband and my children and all of this. But they were so adamant about it, and I apologize. I just didn't feel it was my place to go against them. And he accepts her apology. You kind of see this really lovely scene that we all wanted, and we were so excited for it, and it just made me feel so good. I really loved it. And you could see in the previews he hears the guns, and he says the battle's beginning. And you see her look haunted. Like, oh my God, Roger's stuck there. So in the preview. So you're seeing this little relationship-y thing building there. I love that he asked about Frances too. And you could see his smile light up when he asked about her. So I really love that. Then we get the scene with William and Amaranthus, her having this little toot and being like, but if you want company, I'm sure Miss Mackenzie will oblige you. Now, I know somehow people are like, oh, I think she's nice now. I think she's wonderful now. And all of this type of stuff because she said this kind thing to him about a title isn't something you are. It's just something you have. And it wasn't that great. And she did such a good thing telling him that, you know what? It's bullshit. That is bullshit. She doesn't really feel like that. She said that. But if she really felt like that, she wouldn't be trying to grasp everybody's freaking title. She wouldn't have made her husband lie to his family and pretend he's dead so that she could get grasped at the. She's actually like, I thought I was going to just marry a merchant and I was just going to be a merchant's wife. But look at this. Here I am. That's going to be the Duchess of Parlow and my son's going to be the Duke of Parlow. Like, I really don't care about this. Bullshit, you care about that. You connived this whole thing. And now she's like, right away making the proposition to him, well, you can marry me and then pass the title to our firstborn. And so then at the end of the whole thing, she says, it's not what you are. I think you're more than that. That erases all of that? No, sorry, doesn't erase it for me. Doesn't erase it for me. I don't care. I haven't been won over by her yet with that little line because I think the line was bullshit. And maybe I think the way the show's going to go is that maybe she originally set off making him a mark, but then maybe really falls for him, and that's how they're going to play it. Still not something I'm happy about, if that's the case. Because stop laughing at me, Tom. He thinks I'm being dramatic. Well, I am because it's true. But I think for the show, they might want to have him have a happily ever after thing, so they might do that. And I still think she's a time traveler because I really feel like that clock necklace thing is an indicator for that. But I'm not sold on her yet as far as a decent person. I think she might happenstance jump into being a decent person because she ends up falling for the person that she wasn't originally intending to do that. But at the same time, he's going to know that her husband is alive. So what are they going to do? How are they going to be together if the husband is alive? He's not going to feel good about that. So I don't know how this whole thing's going to pan out, but I still am not down with her because I know that he doesn't know everything yet. So unless they make it that she wasn't in on it at all, that she didn't know or something, which I don't think that's the case, then it's going to feel weird to me. I am not won over because she gave him that line and that was nice in that moment. Well, that doesn't erase everything. But I see a lot of people warming up to her because of that. So, and Diana says they did tone her back from some of the more overt ways that she was in the book. So, and they have. So I will fully admit that I do have a filter with her because I know more than the show people know at this point. And I feel like I don't trust her. And so I kind of am seeing a lot of her actions through that eyes. I will fully admit that. And I know that I'm seeing it through the filter and I'm not seeing it just fresh as they're showing me. So I admit it, but I still don't like her. So I'm really hoping William doesn't end up with her. You should have seen me watch it. Tom wasn't watching it with me, or Tom went by or something and said she was pretty or like good looking. I said, she's a bitch. I hate her. Anyway, let's see what you guys are saying. I'll see if you're all telling me I'm full of crap and I'm being mean or whatever. Maybe I am. Everything, though, that she has done has been a grasping little wench. She has not been all like, not, even that is a lie. We know it's a lie. Her acting like, oh, I thought I was going to marry a merchant. And then look, I'm the Duchess. Like, what do I don't even care. It's nothing. Like, that's bullshit. We know it's bullshit. So, no, if you care, lie. You just sat there and tried to take his title. You can give it to me. I'm just doing this for you, though, just to get rid of this thing you don't want. We'll take it. Please. Please. I can't stand her. Maybe I'm alone on the island. Let me see what you guys said. Oh, I was happy for William and Lord John Grey, but Amaranthus was such a snit about, wasn't she? And that was something they added. Remember this, that was not in the book. We never see Amaranthus meet Bree in the book. We know that she went over there, but remember, she wasn't the subject of the painting before. So we never see her react to Bree. And so that was something they added. They gave her this little jealous thing. And it might have been just jealousy, just for the fact that she liked him or whatever. But to me, it was, who's this bitch? Is she going to interfere with my plans? That's the way I took it. Like she was playing jealous, but I kind of feel like, yeah, maybe she was a little jealous. But I also feel like she was worried about, is this going to be a wrinkle? I'm kind of luring in this fish. Is she going to like be a different thing that's going to take his focus off of what I'm trying to do? The ship is ominous being that close, Carrie says. Hutchinson Island is on the Savannah River, very close to downtown Savannah. And Carrie would know. She's down in Savannah a lot. You really don't like Amaranthus. Yeah. How can you tell, Janine? What gave it away? John's facial expressions are amazing in this scene. I don't trust Amaranthus. Jane says she's a gold digger. She's immature. I don't like her at all. How forward is she to suggest William? I know, right? Well, you can marry me and then pass it on to our son. But I don't really care. It's not like I care about titles. I was like, what? Get out of my face, woman. Pigweed is a snake. She's bothered by the baby. She's not grieving her husband, and it's all happening too fast with William. Yeah, I'm hoping William finds out about her too. Pigweed is conniving. If it was not for Jane, William would probably end up with Fanny. I'm really hoping that's the way it goes in the book, because Fanny's going to be getting older in the book by the time everything is done, and then it won't be a weird thing, really. Because, I mean, look at Fergus and Marsley. Fergus is double her age, or well, not double, when they met. Fergus was 30 and Marsley was 15. So people are okay with that. They can be okay with an 8-year difference between, William and Fanny. That's the way I look at it. Angela wants Pigweed evicted from the 5-star Gray Hotel. Yeah, right? She comes walking out like I don't care about any of these material things. Do you think they'll make it that Amarantha doesn't know about Ben? I don't think so, because of her expression and the way she was acting when he brought her the uniform. Like, she was nervous that he found out something. And she was just like, oh, I didn't ask you to do that. Okay, let me put this away. And she was kind of trying to get off it. That I believe she knows all about it. She's very possessive of him. Vicky said, I saw an interview with the actress who plays Amarantha. She actually made her motive sound maybe not so good, but plausible. Yeah, oh yeah. I saw that. You mean the one that was the TV Insider one? I saw that one, the one that where Charles and her were talking. And I do think they're trying to make it very, and maybe it will be that they end up redeeming her. I saw an interview and I posted it in the feedback thread of Meryl and Matt talking and saying, yeah, she's kind of, sketch, but she also is trying to be a survivor with her son. And that's the way we kind of are looking at her. But they kind of talk about Gayless like that as well. She has secrets and she's kind of a friend to Claire. No, we don't really know because there's things we're not sure of. They kind of talk the same way in describing her. They tried to humanize Leary too. So I'm not totally gonna just take, they're making her a good person. They could have like right off the bat wrote her that way. And they're writing her suspicious, but not as bad as what you kind of get the vibe from in the book. So I'm not sure what they're gonna do. So they come out and she goes, oh, well, Miss Mackenzie, I'm sure she'll keep you company. He goes, are you jealous? And she said, no, don't be silly, whatever. And she starts to walk away and he says, Miss Mackenzie, and then he says Brianna. And I love that hearing him say Brianna and calling her by her name in that familiar way. Like like he's accepting we're siblings. And so he explains their siblings and she says, you told me you didn't have any siblings. She jumped right on that. And I kind of feel like that was one of the things that glommed her onto him, was that he is alone. He has no siblings. There's nothing else to contest for his title in her plan. So she kind of jumped right up. You told me you didn't have any siblings. Then he starts to say, I'm a bastard. You see her kind of go like this. And then him explain the whole story. And that's when she's like, well, you can marry me and then give the title to our firstborn. And I'm like, okay, I'm really, they're not making her different enough for her to be okay in my book. So I'm kind of out on her. Sorry, I am. I do think they might be planning that she'll really fall for him and then come clean and then end up helping him in the end. And that's how they redeem her. I'm kind of thinking that's what they're going to do, because they're going to want William with somebody, but in a way that makes me feel good, because Diana said they didn't do anything she's going to do in book 10. So if they end up putting them together in the show, then I don't think they'll be together in the book. So that's a good point for me. I'm team Fanny and William. I know other people don't like that, but I would rather have him with her. Or if something happens to Ian with Rachel. Anyway, he's like, I tried to renounce the title. And she's like, it's just a title. It's not who you really are, not to me. She says that line about, he must have been a very striking man, meaning like she noted that Brianna was pretty and that looked at William being striking. It was like her way to try to get out of looking like a little conniving woman. She realizes, like, I got to clean this up somehow. So let me give him a compliment. He must be a very striking man. He says he is, So it just, everybody's acting like they have chemistry. I don't really see a lot of chemistry. I don't feel it, but maybe because I don't want to. I admit it. I admit I don't want to, but it's okay. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so then we have Bree and John. And Bree's like, why don't you tell William about me? And I just love the whole Bree and John scene was so good. John trying to like dance on his toes and be like, well, I wasn't sure you'd come. And she's like, I would have come either way. You would have just told me. And she's like, well, I couldn't be sure. One thing that, and this was like added, I think. I don't think this was in the book, or it was in the book differently. But he's like, one thing that all Jamie's children have inherited from him is stubbornness. And he's like, and you could see the way he said this line. He was just so internally exasperated. You could feel it from him. He's like, once you get your head around something, trying to change your mind on it is impossible, or whatever. Like, and he just is freaked out about it. And I just loved his whole tone in that. And the way he was so expressive with it, like he's ready to pull his hair out with this kid. He's driving him nuts, and he's trying to get him on track. I just thought it was really well done, that scene. You kind of see the camaraderie between Bree and John so much in that scene. Her kind of smiling and nodding, and her understanding as a parent now what he's dealing with. And I'll try and all of that. So I kind of like this. I'm looking forward to see where this goes. And then he guesses that she has an ulterior motive, that her husband isn't just outside in town, is he? As she kind of looks down. And he just looks at her like they both know each other so well that they know each other's lines of bullshit, and they kind of are like, okay, I know you're full of crap with me. I'm full of crap with you. We both get it. You're here now, so let's just deal. I like that he knew immediately that she was full of crap about why she's there. And also you see her listen to the ship setting off an explosion or cannon or whatever it was, and you see her reaction, and he says, don't worry, my dear, we're so far and it won't ever get to us. We're fine. It's no problem. Don't worry about anything. You're safe, and all of that. And she just kind of goes like that, because you see her getting more and more worried about Roger. Let me see what you guys are saying. Damn Straightie's a striking man. Today, scammers look for that, people with no family to take advantage of them. Yes, that's what I mean. So almost like she was upset that he has siblings and he lied to her about. Yeah, Mary says, I loved William's smile when he said yes to her comment about the father being striking, acknowledging Jamie has some good qualities. And I think also as he gets to know Bree and he sees how much she's like settled, he knows that Claire, who he really admires, loves him dearly. It's hard to see somebody in a negative light when people you respect care about him and like him. His father, Brianna, Mother Claire, all of them, how much they respect and love him. And so it's going to be harder and harder for him to kind of keep seeing him in a bad light. And he did give Fanny to him, so he has to see him somewhat as okay, or he wouldn't have done that. I loved William saying, I can't imagine anything more tiresome about the. Now, that's another thing that they changed, Diane, a little bit. In the book, she says, we can marry and then until I'm pregnant, and you can pass the title to your firstborn and then go off and breed dachshunds or go across the world, like meaning him go. Like once I have the child, we can pass the title. You can go off and do whatever you want to do. Live your life, breed dachshunds. That's what she says in the book. I mean, and in the show, she says, we can just settle into a private life and breed dachshunds. She says. So they did tone that down a little bit, like where she's not just planning to dismiss him. And she's like, you may just enjoy it. At least we didn't get the cuppage of the vagina thing. I really would have parked. So I'm glad we didn't get that, because a lot of people didn't like that at all when it happened in the book. They thought it was bad character for William. They thought, like, a lot of people had issues with that. So now we get, there were so many good parts of this episode. I was loving this episode so much. We get Fergus and Percy and Fergus and Marsley. And oh my, we get all of this Beecham detail. Like when the scene with Fergus going in to talk to Percy. And that's definitely the office we see John go into, where Richardson pulls the gun on him in the previews. It's that building, that room. And so I don't know if Percy lures him. I hope that they don't make it play that way, that Percy lures him to come for a visit, that he has information for him and sets him up with Richardson, putting the gun to him and all. I hope they don't go that way. It kind of looks like that's what they're doing, because that will definitely make him the bad guy. You know what I mean? Where it's a little more unknown in the book. But anyway, so Percy's there. I loved Fergus in this meeting. He was so Fergus. He was so very skeptical of the bullshit. Let's say this isn't a forgery, and how I suppose you think I'm the result of this tryst. He tells him all about Emily. He tells him about Claude, that he ended up being married into this wealthy family. He gives them this whole background. Now, we've just heard this connection to Claire. Got that reminded to us. So as we're learning about the Beecham background, or Beauchamp, or whatever, and the family dynamic, we're getting that information as a viewer about this potential connection to Claire, as well. I really like the way it was told in the show, because it streamlines a lot of very complex manipulation about how she ended up in the brothel and how he drugged her and all this. It kind of pared it down to be very straightforward. so you really were clear in understanding of what he was saying, what he was asking him to do, why he wanted to do it to get the Northwest and all of that. Like, it was very clear and easy to understand. And you just see for Fergus learning the comp and like seeing the result of that on Fergus's face because of his background with the comp, on all of the adventures they had in France, you know, with the comp, and learn that this guy was his father when he tried to kill me lady. He says to Marcelly afterwards, he tried to kill Milady. Like, are you kidding me? That this man is my father? And it was just so good. Everything with Fergus was so good. I even thought Percy was good in that scene. You got a little more of his character and his demeanor when he's not with John, because we haven't really seen him aside from John. So it was interesting to just see him and himself and the way he's talking. Congratulations, you're not a bastard. It's like, congratulations. It was just really, really good. Trying to think of what else I can remember from that scene. I like the way he packaged everything, and he said, well, if you get this land, you can sell it to my people and for a good sum. And for Fergus, it's a difficult thing because he is seeing the danger constantly happening with his family, bricks being thrown in their windows and all this other stuff. And he knows, like, this would set them up if they could get this money. But at the same time, he's so passionate about his cause. He doesn't want to stop working for his cause, number one. And number two, he doesn't want to be tied into this guy. And Diana did a really good post about that in the Parade magazine. She says, Fergus does know a lot about prostitution, poverty, and crime, and he is taking no chance of his family getting anywhere near his past. From his point of view, he thinks Percy is a con man, liar, no good Nick. B, even if he isn't, Fergus thinks getting anywhere near his own past is dangerous, and he doesn't want his kids ever finding out anything about the rumors and speculations concerning the comp, being tempted to meddle or get too close to very dangerous people, of whom the comp definitely is one. So his mind is, I don't want my family around the machinations of this man and all the things his hands are in. And then we get, as he's talking to him, I loved his whole air. You kind of saw him kind of have almost this aristocratic air as he's talking to Percy. And I just thought that whole scene was just riveting. It was so good. And then when he goes and he talks to Marcelly after, and we got a clip of this scene in promotion stuff, where he puts his head on her shoulder. You know, she's talking to him, and he gives her more detail of what he remembers about Emily and how she hated all the children and that she hated me in particular. And he says, now I understand why. Because of me, she lost everything, her family, her money. She had to become a prostitute, you know, her love, everything gone because of me. And so he's weighing that guilt that the mother he did have lost everything because she was pregnant with him. So it's like another layer on Fergus. And I really don't, that's another reason I don't think they're going to kill Fergus, because they're investing too much into his background to get rid of him now. You know what I mean? It kind of would be, why waste the time of doing all that? So I don't really think that's going to come out to be that line. Okay. So the other thing he talked about was how Emily got taken, that she got drugged with opium and then sold to this brothel. And basically the family just thought she went missing. And then he found this marriage certificate. And you see him, can you imagine being Fergus in this moment, hearing all this? I mean, I just can't even imagine it. It's like kind of freaks you out when you think about it hitting him, and getting to see it made it hit me more than even reading it in the book. And I also am thinking that it's very possible they're going to bring Stanley Weber back in somehow, because he said, when he was talking about and the comp, he said, he was around about 30 years ago, and then he kind of just disappeared without a trace until he was eventually claimed as dead, although his body was never found. And I feel like if they're bringing that into the story, are they going to do something with that? Are they going to then have the comp show up in the story? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think, because they kind of brought the thing that he was never found and he was gone under mysterious circumstances. So I'm curious how they're going to play that. He shares more detail about Amelie being nicknamed the Baroness. And he thought because she was always kind of haughty among the whores there, she kind of seemed like she was above them. And she said he thought it was them being cruel, but now he realizes how cruel it really was. That was an added little bit, because the Fergus in the book doesn't remember. She died when he was 1. So he doesn't remember all this. In the book, in the show, because he was 6 when she died, he has memories of her. So we get a little more about her, which I liked. In the book, he considers taking it because he said it's something to consider if this violence gets worse and I need to find a new way, a new place, a new situation for my family. It would be an out for them. But he doesn't want to have to claim parentage other than Jamie. And this is when we get this line about he came in with every child's dream. This is all from the book. With every child's dream of being the son of a great man. Now, I'm already the son of a great man, and I'd have to put that aside and claim him publicly in order to cash in on that. And he says, I'm not going to do that, like basically. And Marsley smiles like she understands his love for Jamie wouldn't allow him to do that, especially as somebody that tried to kill his mother, who he considers a mother, Claire. So I thought it was all just so good, so much information. I'm dying to see how some of the show fans are reacting to it, but I loved it personally. This also, in this scene, in this episode, having this together, because in the book they weren't all together, having it together be revealed at the same time we're getting these scenes with William struggling. You know how in the book, John Cinnamon almost acted like a foil for William's story? A little bit kind of another person that was left as a child, but really was a different father that they didn't know and all this kind of thing. And we said how that like works together with William's story to make William see it as something else. You kind of are getting that with Fergus, finding out he's not a bastard and he's actually the son of this man and da-da-da and all this kind of thing. Like parents aren't who you thought they were type of thing. And you're seeing that happening for him now, which I thought was pretty cool, like to have it juxtaposed that way. Do you know what I mean? The other thing to note is in the book that happens with Roger. And a lot of people that are book readers missed Roger being in that scene. I actually think it really works without Roger. As much as it's nice to have the brother bond of Roger and Fergus in that scene, I think it works because it really lets you focus on Fergus absorbing this information. And so then we get, before we go on, I love that Fergus told Percy not to call him Claudel. I love that too. Yes, that was great. We know about the comp, but will he show up? Maybe the comp's missing story ties back to when he died in front of Claire and Louis. Maybe he'll show up at the end, give land or money to Fergus. Well, we know he's not dead. And we know he's a time traveler, which means, is Fergus a time traveler? We wonder, right? Well, unless you didn't read Space Between. If you didn't read that, then maybe you don't know that. But if you read that, that's what I think. Anyway, so then we get the scene with Roger in the camp. Best laid plans, right? Didn't go quite as planned. Roger's just shocked to see how Jamie is viewed. And you see, and I love seeing like Roger trying to defend him and saying, he's done all this stuff. He sacrificed for this cause. He's an honorable man. And you see Roger kind of getting defensive, trying to like stick up for Jamie, which I loved. And kind of appalled to see how they're viewing him because like, this is the king of men, JamieFraser. What do you mean? Why are you thinking this about him? So I really love that. I like the guy playing Marion as well, although he doesn't look like the real Marion, but I like his whole tone about him. He says, did he really put his resignation in mud on somebody's shirt as his way of resigning from the thing? And he says, well, it was actually his wife's blood. Potato. It's like, it was actually his wife's blood. Give him a break. And then he's like, look, you can't leave. He's like, oh no, I need to leave. Because he promised, he knows that she'll be beside herself, worried. And he's like, no, you really can't leave because the battle is about to commence soon. I can't have anybody leaving now. And he says, but if, you want to sit here and pray or maybe help us bury people, I'll find a place for you. Or you could fight. And he's like, no. He's like, everybody else doesn't have, I've all told their wives they'd be back too. And you see Roger look at all the men and he says, well, I'm no good with a rifle, but give me a sword and I'll go with you. And so he gets his little, he's going to go out on his field, and we're going to get all that next week. You see him concerned about Brianna. So I really loved all of that. Finally, it's good to see Roger get some action in scenes, his conversations in the print shop, his conversations, with Marion. Now we're going to see him actually in the siege, being a hero. Like, finally, Roger's getting some due. He's kind of been in La La Land so far. So I'm glad that he's getting something in this episode. I feel bad that he wasn't there when Buck came in, but it will be nice to get like a second reunion of them seeing Buck. So that'll be nice too. Okay, so I have a bit of feedback from Terry that I'm going to share because I want to share like one or two pieces of feedback when I do these. Terry says, yay, Buck is back. I cheered when I saw him. Ian and Jamie almost went down the mistaken identity road again, thinking he was Cameron. I guess the Roger fiasco, they learned to ask a few more questions to make sure they know who they're dealing with this time. I love every scene with Frances, and Mrs. Cunningham is perfect and saucy, personality and drinking wise. Her son is starting to show his mean and threatening side, but Claire is not the meek and obedient type. Love the Frasers and the Mackenzies and Savannah. I wish we could have more in-depth scenes with those four. William and Bree. William is completely charmed with Bree and the idea of having a sister, and she is so happy to get to know him. She'll have him on the Fraser is a great man side in no time. Can't blame Amaranthus for shooting her shot and proposing to William, still unsure about her motives. So I hope William stays a bit wary. We need Bree to do an interrogation of her. Percy and Fergus in the Compt, oh my. Glad to see this storyline on the show because I've always thought it was such an interesting possibility. And Cesar's acting in this episode was great. I completely agree with that. One thing I worry about, Frances Marion says Jamie wasn't court-martialed because of Lee's trial, and a good word from Lafayette. However, is this just the show making this up? Because Diana made Jamie a brigadier general because his rank did allow for resignation without consequence. So on that, yes, it was in the book, all of that, because of the way he resigned, with the fact that he wouldn't even come and meet with his supervisor, and the fact that the battle wasn't technically over yet, and he just kind of abandoned everybody and said, I'm resigning on this weird way that he did it. Like, all of that is considered improper, irresponsible as a general. Even though behind the scenes, he was making sure his people were taken care of. He made sure the men knew to go to the marquee and all that kind of stuff. Like, that didn't get passed along. Remember, when rumors get passed, whisper down the lane thing where everybody kind of gets a story half-assed, by the time it gets to like somebody else down the road, it's changed a little bit. You're not getting all the benefit side. You're only getting that son of a bitch just left us and drew his resignation in mud on the back of somebody's shirt and sent him there to talk to Lee and all this. And, like, they're getting like the negative view of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about things in the future. And before I do that, let me just see if there's anything else you guys said that I need to talk about. Fergus time travel equals 50-50. Yeah, but maybe not. Maybe not, because, well, it may be 75-25. I think that the Beechams are also time travelers if they're Claire's ancestors. So it's very possible that Emily also was a time traveler, had the gene, and if they both had the gene, they gave it to Fergus, more than likely. I mean, we see the whole thing with Davy, but that was like a 25% chance that would happen. It just did come out that way on Davy. So it's not the probable if both parents are travelers. You know what I mean? So we never know. Might be. They may be using it as a way to tie together Fergus and Claire as being related. Anyway, okay. He did look pretty suave when he met the fox. Yes! Roger looked really good. They have really made him look good this season. All that aside about the battle and Jamie's resignation, he never left the spot for weeks. Any other general could have come and speak to him at the church and field hospital. Are you defending him? I'm just telling you the way it looks to people. Fergus can go to the future and get a modern prosthetic. Yes. So talking about the future, So the next episode, episode 5, is going to be a doozy. It's going to be a doozy episode. It is written by Luke Scalehouse, who always has doozy episodes with a lot of stuff in them. And it's directed by a new director for the show, Nail, I guess Naill. I don't know how you say that name. Nail, something like that. McCormick. And he's a new director for the show. He does 5 and 6, which are pretty intense episodes. Going to be an intense episode. He directed on Rebus. So maybe he got connected in through his connection with Roger. And it's interesting that he is going to be the director for the next step, where Roger is highly featured in that, in his role and what he's doing and stuff. So it'll be interesting that he's working with a director he kind of knew from Rebus. Also, they were filming season 2 of Rebus while this was being filmed. So that might be why in the beginning, he had less to do, maybe because he was doing another project simultaneously. So we'll see. Episode 5 is titled Send for the Devil, and a synopsis goes like this. With the siege of Savannah raging outside the city walls, Brianna and Roger find themselves on opposite sides of the conflict. Jamie confronts his demons at Lodge Night. So that's what's on deck for episode 5. I don't know if we may get the fire at the end of 5, or they may have the whole fire thing happening in 6. I'm not sure on that, because it seems like a lot going on in 5, but it is Luke Scalehouse. He can get a lot in. In the trailer, we get pieces of Whitaker coming to warn Jamie that Cunningham is coming for him. You see Buck in the background, and I kept thinking, poor Buck, no rest for the weary. The man is constantly put in as needing their help on things, So he's thrown right in. He doesn't even know these people hardly, and he's just going to be thrown into defending the homestead. But the kids he knows. So that's good. He's thrown himself on the line for the family again. You see William telling Bree, I'm afraid the battle has begun, and Bree looking very haunted in it, which tells me that he is going to be the one that takes her around to find Roger, probably. And I think my prediction I said from the promo when she looks up and nods, and after she hugs Roger, and I thought it was William that, talking to her in that scene, that I think that's what happens based on what we saw in the preview. Then we see this shot of William in the camp, kind of going like this, kind of having this look on his face. And I'm wondering if they're going to have it in the show where he sees Ben. Ben is in the camp, in the American camp, in that scene, as he's walking around or leaving, or after he knows they found each other or whatever, he turns and somehow catches a sight of Ben with the Americans there in Savannah. And they see each other because, of course, Ben would never expect William to be there. So that would be interesting. And maybe that he sees him in that moment, and that's when this starts to come into play. So I could see that happening, that might be how they condense it. And that might be another idea for Send for the Devil, because now Bennett ends up being in there as well. So curious to see how that goes. We see Elspeth saying, your husband is a pardoned traitor and has earned his own execution. That's some pretty serious comment from her. Your husband's a pardoned traitor and has earned his own execution. Kiss my ass, lady. And then we see a shot of Roger praying over all the dead bodies laying in the grave. We see Claire saying, don't go. And Jamie saying, we have a plan. And Claire says, plans fail. And it looks like we get a shot of what looks like Buck coming out with a gun on the thing. And right behind him looks like it's Evan Lindsay. That's also coming out to help defend the house. And then he says, I think it'll be an evil night. And you hear a storm brewing outside. So it'll be very interesting. All of that stuff. It looks like such a great episode to be the midpoint. So let me know what you think of those theories. Veronica says, just as we started to like her. Come on, Elspeth. Yeah, Fergus and Marsley in the book know that Claire is a time traveler. They have a conversation about it. And he says, you as well? How about the children? Remember, they have a conversation. But I don't know if they're going to do it in the show. Fergus was a pickpocket and would most likely overhear Jamie and Claire talk about it. There was another great callback, and I can't remember the episode it was in. But remember in the first episode when he says, please, if you're going to do this, be careful. And you see Fergus turn around and look at him with this like little smile and say, always. It reminded me so much of young Fergus. Isn't there a thing where he says that just like that? I think it was where he was going off with Jamie to like poison the wine or whatever. And Claire says, hey, you, be careful. And he goes, always. And he does the same little smile. I feel like Cesar was imitating that moment in that he looked identical. And he even did his facial expression identical to that. I have to go find that episode and see if that's where it's from, because I clearly remember young Fergus doing that, where he says, always me lady, or something like he like, I'm always careful. And his little self-confidence, his little taunting to authority. I mean, I love little Fergus. He was so good. Roman and now Fanny are just two brilliant child actors that they had on this show. I would have liked to have a better version of Jem and Mandy, but, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Yes, in the courtyard of Paris, right? He said, always. And it reminded me when he said in that print shop that he looked just like that. Carrie says, season is great, but going too fast. Yeah, I agree. Veronica, I think the fire may either be at the very end of the episode, like when they're coming back to talk to them, they see the fire and go like, oh my God, or it'll be next episode. And then the fallout of it. Because we see that Marcelly and them are staying, at least Marcelly is staying with John. So we are going to get more stuff after the fire. They don't just turn around and leave. Like they're at John's house, because we see that shot where you see Marcelly like crying on Brianna's lap. That's John's house in the background. So they're staying there after like in the immediate fallout. So we do get them still in Savannah after. So it means that the fire is either going to be early in F6 or maybe at the very end. And we're going to end with seeing the catastrophe of the fire. Kind of like they did with the house fire. I really think that both boys are going to be gone, I think. Just because of the way that sign was cracked, I felt like it was a foreshadowing. The fact that they're saying it may not be what you think or whatever. And the way it said sons and that whole half of the sign was cut off from the rest of it makes me think it could be both of them. We'll see. All right. Hope you enjoyed. So definitely it'll be Saturday. Much love. Bye, everybody.